Guess welfare's paying well these days. The words hit Emma Brooks like thrown stones. She froze near the buffet table, her thrift store black dress clinging to her like borrowed pride. Laughter rippled through the marble hall of the Hayes family mansion. Polished, white, and loud. Every chandelier sparkled like it knew she didn't belong there. Emma had only come to help her roommate cater the Halloween party. But when the last tray ran out and the music started, she'd wandered into the ballroom to watch the rich play pretend. Masks, pearls, tuxedos, champagne. She was invisible until someone decided she shouldn't be. Do they even check invitations anymore? Another voice whispered. A camera flash followed, bright and cruel. Emma's throat tightened. She reached for the door, ready to vanish. Then a shadow stepped between her and the crowd. A tall man in a charcoal suit. No mask, no drink, no smile. Landon Hayes. Everyone in the room straightened when they saw him. The billionaire's only son. The heir who was supposed to inherit everything and smile about it. He looked at her, calm, unreadable. Then he leaned close enough for her to feel his breath. "Do me a favor," he murmured. "Act like you're mine." Before she could answer, his hand slid gently around her waist. Gasps flared like camera shutters. Emma stiffened. "What are you?" "Saving you," he said under his breath, eyes fixed on a red-haired woman across the room. The same one who'd mocked her earlier. "That's my ex. She hates losing." Emma blinked. "And what am I? A distraction." "Exactly." His grin was soft but desperate. "Please." The crowd watched as he guided her to the dance floor. The band slowed. All she could hear was her heartbeat and the crackle of gossip circling like wildfire. "Relax," he whispered. "They'll believe it if you smile." She tried, though her lips trembled. His hand was warm, steady. For a moment, the humiliation faded, replaced by something strange. Safety, maybe. Or danger wearing kindness's mask. But then the red-haired woman stormed forward. "Really, Landon? You're dating your help now?" The room fell silent. Emma's cheeks burned, but she didn't look down. "Maybe he finally learned to date someone who works for a living," she said quietly. A few people laughed, nervous, shocked. The woman's face hardened, and she turned away. Landon exhaled, a shaky half-laugh. "You didn't have to defend me." "I wasn't," Emma said. "I was defending me." For the first time all night, she saw him truly smile, small, real, grateful. But before she could ask why he'd chosen her, the mansion's security chief pushed through the crowd. "Sir, Mr. Hayes wants to see you. Now." Landon's hand slipped from her waist. His father's silhouette loomed near the grand staircase, cold and commanding. "Stay right here," Landon whispered. He walked toward his father, their voices low but sharp, anger in suits and silk. Guests began whispering again, louder this time. Then Emma noticed two men in black moving toward her. One reached for her arm. "Miss, we're going to need you to come with us." Her stomach dropped. "For what?" Questioning. Across the room, Landon turned, but his father caught his wrist, stopping him. The band kept playing. The guests kept pretending. And Emma was led out through the side door, her heels clicking against marble like a countdown. Outside, the autumn wind bit her skin. She wanted to cry, scream, disappear. But then, from behind, she heard the soft purr of a car engine. Landon's voice cut through the night. "Get in." The car doors locked with a soft click. Landon's jaw tightened as he stared through the windshield, the mansion glowing behind them like a golden cage. Emma sat frozen, her fingers gripping her knees. "You shouldn't have done that," she whispered. "They already think I don't belong here." "They're wrong," he said, voice low but certain. "You had every right to be there." A knock at the window cut him off. Two guards in black suits stood outside, flashlights in hand. One motioned for him to roll down the glass. "Mr. Hayes," the taller one said, "your father requests that the woman step out of the vehicle." Emma's stomach turned to ice. She shook her head. "I didn't do anything." "I know," Landon muttered. He looked at the guards. "Tell him we'll come in together." "Sir," the man said carefully, "that won't be necessary." Landon's shoulders rose and fell. He exhaled sharply, then opened his door. "Fine. We'll handle this." Emma followed him back toward the house, every step heavier than the last. The crowd hadn't left. They'd gathered on the steps, their masks lifted, hungry for a show. Richard Hayes stood at the top, silver hair gleaming under the chandelier's glow. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't have to. Power lived in his silence. "Landon," he said evenly, "your guest has caused quite the disruption." "She's not a guest," someone whispered nearby. "She's one of the servers." Emma swallowed hard. "I was invited." "By whom?" Richard cut in. The question sliced like glass. Emma glanced at Landon, who stepped forward without hesitation. "By me," he said. The murmurs turned into a wave of noise. Cameras clicked. Someone gasped audibly. Richard's eyes narrowed. "You brought her here?" "Yes," Landon said. "She's my date." Emma's heart stopped. The words echoed in her chest like thunder. She could see it in Richard's face, the disbelief curdling into anger. Richard stepped closer, close enough that the crowd leaned in. "Do you realize what you've done?" Landon didn't flinch. "Protected someone who didn't deserve to be humiliated in front of your friends." The elder Hayes's tone chilled. "Do not confuse pity for bravery, son. The name Hayes carries weight. Choose carefully who you drag into it." Emma clenched her fists. "I didn't ask for your name or your pity." A few people gasped again. The air turned sharp. Richard's gaze flicked over her, cold and assessing. "Then do the decent thing, Miss Brooks. Leave quietly, before you embarrass yourself further." Landon stepped in front of her. "She's not leaving." "Yes," his father said, "she is." Guards approached from both sides. The guests whispered like wind through dry leaves. Emma's throat burned, but she kept her chin high. "Don't," she murmured to Landon. "It's not worth it." He looked at her, helpless. "Emma." She pulled her arm free before the guards could touch her. "It's fine. I know when I'm not welcome." And with that, she turned and walked down the marble stairs alone, her heels echoing in the silence like defiance. Outside, the night air bit at her skin. The lights from the mansion spilled across the driveway like judgment. Her old car waited at the edge of the property, dented and faithful. She was halfway to it when she heard footsteps behind her. "Emma, wait." Landon's voice. She spun around. "Go back, Landon. You'll only make it worse." "I don't care," he said. "I'm not letting you walk away like that. You can't fix what your father started." He looked at her for a long moment, his breath visible in the cold. "Then maybe it's time someone tried." Before she could reply, a car engine roared to life near the gates. Headlights cut across the darkness, speeding straight toward them, too fast. Emma's heart leapt. Landon grabbed her hand, yanking her out of the way as tires screamed against the gravel. The car skidded past, missing them by inches. It didn't stop. It just kept going, straight back toward the mansion. The crash came seconds later, shattering glass and silence alike. The sound of the crash faded into a distant echo, swallowed by the night. Emma ran toward her car, heart pounding, breath fogging in the cold. All she wanted was to get out, to leave this cursed mansion, this town, this night. But when she reached her car, her steps faltered. The headlights revealed both tires on the driver's side, slashed clean through. The rubber curled like torn skin. And under her windshield wiper, something white fluttered in the breeze. A note. She unfolded it with shaking fingers. "Stay in your place." No name. No signature. Just black marker, angry and ugly. Her knees gave out. She sank against the car door, the paper trembling in her hands. The laughter from the mansion was long gone, replaced by silence heavy enough to choke on. Tears burned behind her eyes. She'd worked so hard just to survive. 2 jobs, late rent, a dream of going back to college, and now she was reduced to this. A mistake someone wanted erased. A car engine hummed behind her. For a second, fear shot through her chest again. Then she heard his voice. Emma. Landon. He stepped out of his car, his suit jacket gone, his hair ruffled from the chaos inside. His face carried the kind of exhaustion that came from fighting battles you were never meant to win. I tried to stop him, he said quietly. My father, his. Don't. Her voice cracked. Don't defend him. You saw what happened. You saw what they think of me. He took a slow breath. I did. And I'm sorry. She looked up at him, wet-eyed, furious. Sorry doesn't fix this. She pointed at the slashed tires. Or that note. Or how every single person in that room looked at me like I didn't deserve to breathe the same air. Landon didn't argue. He crouched beside the car, scanning the damage, then stood again. You're right. It doesn't fix anything. But I can help you get home safely. Emma laughed bitterly. You think I trust any of you right now? No, he admitted. But I trust me. He extended his hand, not like a savior, but like a man desperate to make something right. The porch light behind him threw his shadow long and dark across the driveway. Emma stared at his hand for a long time before taking it. Only because I don't have another choice. That's fair, he said softly. They walked to his car together, the gravel crunching underfoot. Emma caught her reflection in the side window, mascara-streaked, eyes hollow. She barely recognized herself. As she slid into the passenger seat, the interior smelled like cedar and rain. Landon started the engine. Neither spoke for several miles. The road stretched quiet and endless, lined with sleeping houses and the hum of faraway crickets. Finally, Emma broke the silence. Why did you even help me back there? You didn't owe me anything. He glanced at her, the dashboard light catching the edge of his jaw. Because I'm tired of watching people like my father win. Her breath caught. She wasn't sure what he meant, but she heard truth in it. Raw, heavy truth. When they reached her street, she hesitated. Her neighborhood was old, the kind of place with cracked sidewalks and porch lights that flickered like ghosts. He parked at the curb. Thank you, she said, voice barely a whisper. Landon nodded. Can I at least make sure you're safe inside? She shook her head. You've done enough. Trust me. He managed a half smile. If you change your mind, I'll find a way to make it right. Emma opened the door, the cold night air rushing in. For a moment, their eyes met, hers weary, his regretful. Then she stepped out and closed the door. The sound echoed like the end of a fragile truce. Inside the mansion, miles away, a light blinked on a screen in Richard Hayes's study. A red dot moved across a digital map, Landon's car GPS pinging its final destination. The name beside the dot, Emma Brooks. Richard leaned back in his chair, eyes narrowing. So that's where she lives. He knows where to find her now. The next morning came gray and cold. Emma stood behind the counter of Millie's diner, the smell of burnt coffee and bacon filling the air. Her uniform was wrinkled, her eyes tired from a night with no sleep. She kept seeing the note in her head, stay in your place. The words haunted her like a bruise that wouldn't fade. Table 4 needs more syrup, her manager barked from the kitchen window. And smile this time, Brooks. Customers can feel attitude. She nodded, biting her tongue. Smile. Always smile. The rule for every working woman who couldn't afford to lose her job. The doorbell jingled. She looked up, and froze. Landon Hayes stood there, in jeans and a dark hoodie, looking painfully out of place among the chrome booths and grease-stained menus. What are you doing here? She whispered when he reached the counter. He offered a small smile. Having breakfast. You don't eat breakfast here. You don't eat anywhere like here. Then I guess today's a first. He slid onto a stool. Coffee, please. Black. And maybe a slice of forgiveness on the side. She sighed, filling the cup. You think this is funny? No, he said quietly. I think it's the only way I can apologize properly. Emma placed the mug in front of him, avoiding his eyes. Apology accepted. Now go. I can't. Why not? Because I came to offer you a job. She blinked. Excuse me. At Hayes Industries, he said, leaning forward. You're smart, organized. You handle chaos better than anyone I've ever seen. Let me make things right. She laughed, bitter and disbelieving. You want me to work for the same company run by the man who called me a disgrace? I run my own division, he said. You'd be working for me, not him. Still him, she said flatly. His name's on every paycheck. Landon's smile faded. Then let me change what that name stands for. Before Emma could answer, a loud voice interrupted. Brooks. Her manager stormed out from the kitchen, red-faced and sweating. Behind him, a customer, an older man in a suit, stood at the register, arms crossed. She rolled her eyes at me, the man complained. No respect. I pay good money to eat here. I didn't roll my eyes, Emma started, but her manager raised a hand. Save it. You're done, Brooks. Grab your things. Her stomach dropped. You're firing me? Over that. Over your attitude, he snapped. This is a family place. She glanced at the customer, who smirked like victory. Rage burned under her ribs, but she swallowed it. Fighting would only feed them more satisfaction. Landon rose slowly from his seat. She didn't do anything wrong. Stay out of it, the manager said. This doesn't concern you. Oh, I think it does, Landon said, his voice low, dangerous. I own half the real estate this diner sits on. The room fell silent. Emma's eyes widened. Her manager's mouth opened, then closed again. I didn't realize. I suggest you stop firing good people, Landon said. Especially when they're better than you'll ever deserve. He turned to Emma. Come on. She hesitated, torn between pride and exhaustion. Everything inside her screamed not to depend on him, not again. But what was left? Rent was due. Her car was ruined. Her mother's health was slipping. She unclipped her name tag and placed it on the counter. Guess I'm done smiling for tips. Landon opened the door for her. Then let's find you a better reason to smile. Outside, the cold wind hit her face. For the first time in weeks, it didn't sting. It felt like air she could breathe. He handed her a business card. Hayes Industries, Public Relations Department. Think of it as a chance, he said softly. Not a favor. She stared at the card for a long moment before slipping it into her pocket. Fine. I'll take the job. Landon smiled, a little relieved, a little nervous. You won't regret it. Emma glanced back at the diner, her ex-manager still glaring through the window, and muttered, I already do. Tomorrow, she walks into Hayes Industries, and the same man who humiliated her at the party is waiting. The glass doors of Hayes Industries opened with a soft hiss, and for a moment, Emma felt like she was walking into another universe. Polished marble floors stretched endlessly. Digital screens looped glossy ads about innovation, equality, and community impact. But beneath the slogans, she could feel the chill, the kind that didn't come from air conditioning. She straightened her blazer, the only professional jacket she owned, and forced a calm breath. This was her chance. Her clean slate. Emma Brooks. The receptionist's tone was polite, but her eyes flicked down to Emma's name badge, then up again, measuring, curious. You can take the elevator to the 15th floor. HR will meet you there. Thank you, Emma said softly. The elevator ride felt like a climb through invisible walls. When the doors opened, chatter filled the air. Laughter. Clicking heels. The scent of perfume mixed with coffee. But as she stepped out, everything went silent, for just a second too long. A woman near the printer leaned toward her coworker and whispered, That's her. The girl from the party. Emma's stomach tightened. She pretended not to hear, walking briskly toward her cubicle. Someone muttered, Guess sleeping with the boss pays off. Another giggled behind her hand. Emma forced herself to keep moving, her eyes fixed on the desk with her name taped to the corner. It wasn't much, just a computer and a view of the parking lot, but it was hers. Moments later, Landon appeared. He looked completely different in a dark gray suit, confident, focused, but softer when he saw her. "You made it," he said. "Barely," she muttered. "They look at me like I'm a scandal waiting to happen." "You're not," he said firmly. "You're here because you deserve to be." Before she could reply, a woman in a navy skirt suit appeared beside them, her HR badge gleaming. "Mr. Hayes," she said smoothly, "will handle orientation from here." Landon nodded. "Of course. Just make sure she's included in all PR briefings." The HR woman smiled politely, but her eyes told another story. "We'll see what's appropriate." Emma caught the tone. It wasn't a question of policy, it was protection. For them, not her. Hours passed. HR walked her through dull safety modules, office maps, and codes of conduct, but avoided mentioning anything about real projects. Every time Emma passed a glass-walled meeting room, she could see teams gathered around whiteboards, brainstorming, laughing, collaborating, doors closed. She wasn't invited. At lunch, she sat alone in the cafeteria. Conversations around her buzzed like static, snippets of gossip disguised as jokes. PR girls got guts showing up after that party. "I heard his dad almost called the cops on her. She's lucky she's cute." Emma's fork froze midair. She wanted to disappear into her salad. Landon appeared again, tray in hand, and sat across from her. "Mind if I join you?" "You shouldn't," she said quietly. "They're already talking. Let them talk." He took a bite of his sandwich. "Truth doesn't need permission." She gave a tired laugh. "You talk like someone who's never had to fight to be believed." He looked at her then, really looked, and said, "You're right." Something in his eyes made her heart stumble. But before she could speak, her computer chimed from the far end of the cafeteria. The office notification sound was soft, but it carried like thunder. Everyone's phones started buzzing at once. Heads turned. Screens lit up. Whispers spread, quick and electric. Emma frowned. "What's happening?" A woman nearby gasped, hand over her mouth. Another man chuckled darkly. Landon's phone vibrated. He pulled it from his pocket, glanced at the screen, and his face drained of color. He showed it to her. It was an email sent to all staff. Subject: office gossip or truth. Body: CEO's son dating the help. Guess Hayes Industries is an equal opportunity employer after all. Attached was a blurred photo of Emma and Landon dancing from the Halloween party. His hand at her waist, her eyes caught mid-laugh. Gasps filled the room. Emma's heart pounded so loud she could barely hear. Landon stood instantly, scanning the room as whispers erupted like wildfire. Her vision blurred. It felt like the floor had dropped out from under her. Someone muttered, "Told you so." The HR director appeared in the doorway, face pale, voice clipped. "Mr. Hayes, the board wants to see you. Now." Emma looked at him, eyes glassy, voice cracking. "This is exactly what they wanted, isn't it?" Landon didn't answer. He couldn't. He only reached for her hand under the table, the smallest, quietest rebellion left between them. Whispers are turning into headlines. The world's about to choose sides. By morning, Emma's phone wouldn't stop buzzing. At first, she thought it was just messages from work. But when she unlocked the screen, her stomach dropped. Her picture, the same one from the Halloween party, was everywhere. Except now, it wasn't just an email. It was a meme. The caption read, "From waitress to CEO's favorite charity case. #diversity goals." Her face had been edited, waitress apron added, champagne glass in hand, fake smile pasted on. Thousands of shares, hundreds of comments. His slumming for the season. Guess the company's new policy is dating the help. She should be grateful she was even invited. Emma's throat went dry. She scrolled, faster, desperate to find one good comment. There weren't any. Her hands shook as she closed the app. Her phone buzzed again. A new message, unknown number. You don't belong in his world. Leave before you ruin him too. The screen blurred through her tears. When she reached the office, whispers followed her like perfume. People didn't even try to hide it anymore. The laughter stopped only when she walked past, then started again as soon as she was gone. Her desk was covered with printouts of the meme. Someone had taped one to her computer screen. Emma tore it down, chest tight, when a shadow fell across her desk. Landon. He looked furious, eyes red from lack of sleep. They crossed a line. They've been crossing lines since the first night we met, she whispered. HR says they're investigating the leak, he said. But that's not enough. Nothing ever is, she murmured. Because no matter what happens, they'll believe what fits their story. He opened his mouth to respond, but a voice boomed from behind him. Landon. His father stood there, Richard Hayes, flanked by 2 board members. His tone carried the weight of judgment dressed in silk. We need to speak. Now. Landon stiffened. Whatever you have to say, you can say it here. Richard's eyes flicked toward Emma. This isn't the place. It is if you're going to talk about her, Landon said. The air grew tense. Even the keyboards stopped clacking. Richard's expression didn't change. She's a distraction. Emma's breath caught. Richard continued, voice cold as steel. You have responsibilities, Landon. To this company, to your family name. She is noise, and you're letting it drown your future. Landon stepped forward, jaw tight. She's not noise. The board member beside Richard sighed. Mr. Hayes, the company's reputation is on the line. The investors are calling for her termination. Emma blinked hard. Termination. I'll resign, Landon said instantly. Richard's composure cracked. You will do no such thing. But Landon wasn't listening anymore. He turned to Emma, his voice steady but soft. They can take everything from me, but they don't get to take you. Emma's eyes widened. Landon, no. He reached for her hand, pulling her gently toward him. Effective immediately, he said, facing the board, I resign from Hayes Industries. A wave of gasps spread through the floor. Phones lifted, recording. Richard Hayes's face flushed with fury. Do you have any idea what you're doing? His father demanded. Yes, Landon said. I'm choosing who I am. And before anyone could speak, before his father could drag him away, he turned back to Emma and kissed her. It wasn't reckless. It wasn't for show. It was the kind of kiss that dared the whole world to hate them. When they pulled apart, the office was silent except for the clicks of camera phones and the muffled gasp of someone whispering, "Oh my God." Landon laced his fingers through hers, eyes still locked on his father's. I'm done pretending, he said. Richard's voice dropped to a growl. You've just destroyed everything I built. Landon squeezed Emma's hand. Then maybe it wasn't worth building. He led her out, past the stunned faces, past the cameras, past the company logo shining like a false promise on the wall. They stepped into the cold daylight, the city noise swallowing them whole. Emma's pulse thundered. You just walked away from your entire life. He looked at her, really looked, and said, No, Emma. I just found it. By nightfall, that kiss would explode across the internet, and the real storm would begin. The fallout hit faster than either of them imagined. By sunrise, every news channel had the clip, Billionaire's son quits in public scandal, love or rebellion. By noon, Landon's father had revoked his credit cards, locked his bank accounts, and removed him from the company board. He went from penthouse to pavement overnight. Emma found him standing outside her apartment that evening, holding a single duffel bag and wearing the same clothes from the day before. His eyes were tired, but there was a kind of peace behind them, the kind that only comes when you've already lost everything. You weren't kidding, she said softly, opening the door. Nope, he said. Turns out, being disowned doesn't come with a severance package. Her apartment was tiny, one bedroom, peeling paint, a fridge that hummed like an old truck. She hadn't planned on sharing it with anyone, much less the man who used to live in a skyline penthouse. Landon looked around. It's small. It's real, she replied. You'll get used to it. He smiled faintly. Guess that makes two of us. They ate instant noodles at the kitchen counter, knees bumping under the narrow space. Outside, sirens wailed in the distance, city lights flickering through the thin curtains. This isn't how I wanted your life to look, Landon said quietly. Emma laughed, not unkindly. My life has never looked how I wanted it to. You just got here. He winced a little, but she reached across the counter and touched his hand. I don't need mansions, Landon. I just need peace. He nodded, eyes soft. Then we'll build it here. For a while, they did. Landon got a job at a small marketing firm under a fake last name. Hayes carried too much baggage now. Emma picked up extra hours at a bookstore nearby. Their days were slow but honest, their nights filled with quiet laughter and cheap dinners. But peace, in their world, was never built to last. One evening, Emma returned from work to find Landon sitting on the couch, surrounded by unopened mail. His expression was unreadable. What is it? She asked, setting down her bag. He held up a plain, unmarked envelope. This came in the mail today. No return address. Her stomach tightened. Maybe it's junk. It's not. His voice was steady, but his hands trembled slightly. He passed it to her. Emma tore it open. Inside was a single photograph. It was her and Landon, asleep. Her heart froze. The picture had been taken through their bedroom window. Her head rested on his chest, the blanket barely covering them. The angle was close, deliberate, invasive. She turned the photo over. On the back, scrawled in thick black ink, were 4 words, "You're being watched." Emma's breath caught. The walls seemed to close in, every creak of the old apartment now sinister. Who would do this? She whispered. Landon's jaw clenched. Someone with money. Someone with reach. Your father. Maybe. Or someone working for him. Emma's voice shook. This isn't just a warning. It's a threat. Landon stood, pacing the room, his mind already racing. We can report it. To who? She snapped. The same system that protects men like your father? They'll say we sent it to ourselves for attention. He stopped pacing, realizing she was right. For all his privilege, he was now standing in her world, the one where power played by different rules. We'll figure it out, he said finally, softer this time. I promise. But as he reached for her, she barely moved. Her eyes were still locked on the photo, her reflection caught faintly in the glossy surface. Landon, she whispered, voice trembling. If they're watching us, then they already know where we are. A knock echoed suddenly at the door, 3 sharp raps that cut through the silence like gunshots. They froze. Neither spoke. The knock came again. Someone has found them, and it's only the beginning of the hunt. The knocking finally stopped, but sleep never came that night. Emma sat curled on the couch, arms around her knees, while Landon checked the locks for the 10th time. The photo lay between them on the coffee table, that glossy threat glinting under the dim lamplight. Whoever sent this wanted us scared, he said quietly. And it's working. She looked up, her voice a whisper. They know where we live, Landon. They could have done worse than take a picture. He nodded slowly. Which means it's a warning, not a finale. They're watching for a reason. Hours later, when dawn cracked grey over the skyline, Landon's phone buzzed. A single text from an old coworker read, "Clean out your email. HR purged everything. Orders came from the top." He stared at the screen, dread curling in his gut. "They're covering tracks," he muttered. Emma frowned. "Tracks for what?" He hesitated before answering. "My father runs a charity division, Hayes Foundation. They claim to fund community projects, scholarships, medical grants. But," he met her eyes. "Emma, I never saw a single report about where that money actually goes." Her stomach twisted. "You think he's hiding something?" "I think he's hiding everything." They spent the morning piecing through whatever scraps Landon could recover from his old files. Emails, receipts, partial reports. Most were encrypted, but one attachment slipped through the cracks. A scanned list of beneficiaries. Emma leaned closer to the screen. These are fake. Landon scrolled down. How do you know? Because that's my name, she said, pointing. Emma Brooks, under Community Impact Scholarship. I never applied for anything. I never got a dime. He froze. Her name, her address, even her date of birth, all there, filed as a recipient of $10,000 from his father's foundation. Landon, she whispered, trembling, he's using us. It hit him like a blow. That's why he let the media turn us into a circus. The gossip wasn't to humiliate me. It was to bury the real scandal. She stared at the computer screen, disbelief turning to anger. His laundering charity money through fake names, through my name. Landon closed the laptop and exhaled, mind spinning. We need proof. Real proof. Something that can't be denied. Emma looked at him, fear flickering in her eyes. You mean? Yes, he said. We're going back. That night, the city slept while they moved like ghosts. Landon parked 3 blocks from the gleaming tower of Hayes Industries, his former kingdom now turned fortress. Security rotates every 30 minutes, he whispered, pulling a small card from his pocket. This still gets us into the side garage. Emma's hands shook as they slipped through the service door. The building smelled sterile, like glass and secrets. Elevators were out of the question. They took the stairs, breath echoing against concrete. 15th floor. Executive offices. When they reached the hallway, Landon pulled a small flashlight from his pocket. The walls were lined with photos, his father shaking hands with politicians, standing beside oversized donation checks, smiling like a saint. Emma muttered under her breath, he builds his image on other people's pain. Landon didn't answer. He was already at the door to his father's office, typing in the old passcode. The light flashed red. Denied. Try his birthday, Emma whispered. He entered it. Nothing. She frowned. What about yours? Landon hesitated, then tried it. The lock beeped green. Her breath caught. He used your birthday as his password. That's not security, Landon said bitterly. That's ego. The door clicked open, revealing an office that smelled faintly of cigars and power. Dark wood. Leather chairs. And at the center, a steel cabinet locked tight. Emma knelt beside it, eyes scanning the desk. There has to be a key. Landon moved behind the large family portrait on the wall, his father shaking hands with the mayor. Something metallic clinked. He pulled out a small brass key taped to the back of the frame. Of course, he muttered, always hiding sins behind smiles. The cabinet opened with a soft groan. Inside, rows of folders gleamed under the flashlight beam, each labeled with a code: Raven 01, Raven 02, Unity, Beacon, Solace. Emma reached for one marked Project Unity. She flipped through the pages, spreadsheets, fake donor signatures, offshore bank accounts, transfers disguised as grants. Her voice trembled. This is it, Landon. This is everything. Footsteps echoed from down the hall. They froze. The flashlight flickered. A voice, muffled but distinct, called out, "Security check. Anyone here?" Landon grabbed the files and stuffed them into his bag. Emma reached for the laptop sitting on the desk, shoving it under her arm. "Go," he whispered. They slipped into the darkness just as the elevator doors opened behind them, spilling light across the floor. They got the proof, but someone knows they were there. The night swallowed them whole as they sped away from the Hayes Industries tower. Landon's old sedan hummed down the empty highway, its headlights cutting through fog that clung to the asphalt like smoke from something burning far away. Emma clutched the black laptop to her chest. It felt heavier than it should, like it carried not just data, but danger. When they finally reached her apartment, they didn't turn on the lights. The curtains stayed closed. Landon locked the door, triple-checking it before setting his bag on the table. "Let's see what's inside," he whispered. Emma opened the laptop. The startup sound was too loud in the quiet room. A password box blinked on the screen. "Try your father's," she said. Landon typed it. "Denied. Try mine." He did. Denied again. Then she noticed a faint smudge on the screen, a fingerprint left behind. She touched it gently, tracing the edge. Wait, maybe he used biometrics. Landon reached into the bag and pulled out a small glass tumbler from his father's office. He'd taken it on instinct, not realizing how useful it might become. Emma grabbed a piece of tape, pressed it against the glass, and lifted a faint oily print. She stuck it to the laptop's sensor. The computer blinked, processing, then unlocked. Her heart skipped. "We're in." The desktop was cluttered with icons, documents, encrypted folders, a hidden drive labeled Unity Backup. Landon's stomach tightened. Project Unity. That's the one we saw in the cabinet. Emma clicked it open. The files loaded slowly, line by line, revealing spreadsheets of names, bank numbers, and account summaries. Each entry listed women, mostly Black and Latina, supposedly receiving large grants for community development. Emma scrolled faster, her fingers trembling. "These are real people." Landon frowned. "Are they?" She clicked one. The address matched an abandoned housing project across town. Another, her old apartment building, before the eviction. And then another, her mother's name. Her voice cracked. "Oh my God. He used my mother's identity." The room fell silent. Landon leaned closer, reading the entry. Gloria Brooks, $25,000 Community Award. Status, fulfilled. Emma's eyes filled with tears. She never got anything. He used us as paper shields to move his money. Landon's expression darkened. He didn't just steal from charities. He used minority women as his cover story. That's why he kept me quiet. Why he kept you humiliated. We were a distraction from the fraud. Emma scrolled to the bottom of the list. Her own name glared back at her, stamped with an electronic signature she never wrote. Her voice dropped to a whisper. "He signed me into his crime." A shiver ran through her. She felt trapped, even in her own skin. Landon rubbed his temples, pacing. "If the media gets this, he's finished." Emma nodded, wiping her eyes. "Then we give it to them." He hesitated. "Not yet. We need to make copies. Protect ourselves first. Once he realizes these files are missing." The laptop screen flickered. Emma froze. "Did you touch something?" "No." The cursor moved on its own. Folders began closing one by one. A new message popped up across the center of the screen. "Access detected. Remote security protocol initiated." "Landon," she whispered. "Someone's inside the system." The files started deleting themselves. She yanked the flash drive from the USB port, heart pounding. "I saved most of it," she gasped. He grabbed his jacket. "We have to move, now." They rushed toward the door, but the hallway outside was no longer dark. The stairwell lights were on, glowing unnaturally bright. Emma's pulse quickened. "You left the lights off when we came in, right?" Landon didn't answer. His hand found hers, squeezing tight. Then, suddenly, the apartment lights flickered. Once, twice, and stayed on. A voice boomed through the intercom. "Mr. Hayes, Miss Brooks, step away from the computer." Emma's blood ran cold. They turned toward the window. Two red laser dots danced on the curtains. Snipers. The intercom crackled again. "You have something that doesn't belong to you." Landon whispered. "They traced us." The laptop screen went black, replaced by a single blinking icon. Raven security active. Emma's breath trembled. "They know exactly where we are." The sound of heavy footsteps filled the stairwell outside. Landon grabbed the flash drive and shoved it into his pocket. "We need to go." "How?" she whispered. "They're already here." The doorknob turned slowly. He met her eyes. "Window. Now." She hesitated only for a second before nodding. Together, they climbed out onto the fire escape as the door burst open behind them. Men in black suits flooding into the apartment, flashlights slicing through the darkness. Emma looked back once. The laptop lay open on the table, its camera light glowing faintly red. They weren't just being hunted. They were being watched in real time. They have the truth, but someone powerful is already erasing it. They didn't make it far. By morning, Emma and Landon were hiding in an abandoned warehouse by the pier, the stolen flash drive tucked inside her jacket. The air was damp with sea salt and rust, the distant hum of traffic blending with waves slapping against the dock. They hadn't slept. Every sound felt like a threat. Every shadow moved wrong. Landon crouched beside her, whispering, "We can still disappear. New names, new city." Emma shook her head. "And run for the rest of our lives? No. We finish this. We expose him." He looked at her, seeing the exhaustion in her eyes but also the fire that hadn't died. "You're braver than me." Before she could answer, a harsh light cut through the cracked windows. Sirens wailed outside, echoing off the concrete. Emma's breath caught. "No!" "Landon," a voice shouted from outside, filtered through a megaphone. "Step away from the woman and come out with your hands up." Landon's jaw tightened. He found us. Police flooded the entrance, red and blue lights flashing like a storm. "Emma Brooks," one officer barked. "You're under arrest for corporate data theft, unauthorized access, and conspiracy to defraud Hayes Industries." She stared in disbelief. "What? That's not true." "Tell it to your lawyer." The officer grabbed her arm, forcing her to her knees. Landon moved instinctively, stepping between them. "She didn't steal anything." Another officer raised a hand. "Sir, stand down. Dad set this up." Landon shouted, but his voice was lost under the buzz of radios and the clatter of boots. Emma's wrists snapped together in cold metal. The cuffs bit into her skin. Cameras flashed outside the warehouse. Paparazzi, reporters, chaos. Someone must have tipped them off. Landon lunged forward again, but an officer blocked him. "Don't make this worse, son." "Son." The word hit like poison. Landon turned sharply. "You work for him, don't you?" The officer didn't answer. They dragged Emma toward the police car, flashes blinding her as reporters screamed questions. "Emma, did you steal the files? Were you trying to blackmail the Hayes family? Did Landon help you?" She tried to speak, but the words wouldn't come. Her voice cracked under the noise, lost in the frenzy. And then she saw it, her face on the nearest camera's small screen, her expression wild and broken. She knew how it would look on television. They'd already written her story before she could tell it. From the crowd came a new voice, smooth, practiced, and cruelly calm. Richard Hayes. He stood in front of the microphones, perfectly dressed, his hand resting on the podium like a man born to control the narrative. Behind him, the Hayes Industries logo gleamed like a halo. "My family and I are deeply saddened," he said into the cameras, his tone dripping with sincerity. "A trusted former employee betrayed us, stealing confidential files and fabricating false accusations. We are cooperating fully with law enforcement." Emma froze. Her pulse pounded in her ears. "Betrayed us?" she whispered. "He's calling me a thief." Richard's voice carried across the lot. "Our foundation's purpose has always been to uplift communities. It pains me to see someone twist that mission for personal gain." Landon's face drained of color. His rewriting history in real time. Richard continued, eyes glinting as the cameras ate up his every word. "We will not allow one misguided woman to destroy decades of hard work and integrity." Emma shouted across the chaos, "You're lying. You used my name. You used all of us." The reporters turned their lenses toward her, microphones thrust forward. But Richard didn't even glance her way. He smiled for the cameras, the kind of smile that sells a lie as easily as truth. Landon tried to push past the officers, yelling, "Stop this. She's innocent." Richard's gaze finally met his. His smile didn't falter. "You've made your choice, son. And now, you'll live with it." Two officers grabbed Landon, holding him back. "You're interfering with an arrest," one warned. "Let me go," he shouted. "Dad, please, she's not what you think." Richard turned away, stepping back toward the crowd of flashing cameras. "My family will move forward. We always do." Landon's voice broke. "I'm your family." But his father didn't even turn around. The officers pushed Emma into the back seat of the police car. The cuffs dug deeper as she fought to catch one last look at Landon. Their eyes met through the glass, his filled with rage and guilt, hers with disbelief and fear. The engine roared to life. Flashbulbs popped like gunfire. Reporters swarmed around the car, their voices overlapping into a blur of noise. "Emma, are you admitting guilt? Is this revenge? Did Landon Hayes help you?" She closed her eyes, tears slipping down her cheeks. "No," she whispered. "I just told the truth." The door slammed shut. Through the tinted glass, she saw Landon drop to his knees as the cameras turned away from him, chasing the bigger story, the fallen woman. The police car rolled forward, crawling through the chaos. And above it all, the billboards outside Hayes Tower glowed with new words, looping across every screen in the city. Hayes Industries, integrity, honor, trust. As the sirens fade, the world believes his lie, and Emma becomes the villain of her own truth. The cell door clanged shut behind her, metal scraping against metal, a sound that could crush hope if you let it. Emma sat on the narrow cot, staring at the gray wall in front of her. The air smelled like bleach and despair. Outside her cell, a guard's footsteps echoed down the corridor, steady, careless, like this was just another night. She pressed her hands together, her wrists still sore from the cuffs. The headlines she'd glimpsed before they took her phone played in her mind: Emma Brooks, from charity face to criminal case. Landon Hayes' girlfriend caught stealing corporate secrets. They had rewritten her entire life in a single sentence. A soft voice broke the silence. "You look like someone who just realized the world don't care what the truth is." Emma turned. Across the cell, sitting on the lower bunk, was a woman maybe in her late 50s. Dark skin, silver braids, eyes sharp and kind. She wore the same orange jumpsuit, but it somehow didn't dull her presence. "Who are you?" Emma asked quietly. The woman smiled faintly. "Name's Gloria. Gloria Knox. Arrested for raising my voice at the wrong time, in the wrong place." Emma frowned. "What do you mean?" Gloria leaned back, crossing her arms. "I was protesting outside the courthouse last week. They said I interfered with traffic. Funny thing is, the only thing I stopped was silence." Emma studied her. "You were protesting police brutality." "Still am," Gloria said. "Even from in here. You don't stop fighting just because they throw walls around you." The words hung in the air. Emma looked down at her hands. "They said I stole from them. That I lied." Gloria tilted her head. "Did you?" "No." "Then they're scared of what you know." Emma hesitated. "They're not scared of me. They're powerful. I'm just me." Gloria's laugh was soft but full of fire. "That's exactly why they're scared. Powerful folks panic when the just mis of the world start telling the truth." Emma felt something shift inside her. It doesn't matter. They control the media, the money, the narrative. Gloria leaned forward, her voice dropping low and steady. They only control the silence you give them. You want to win? Stop being quiet. Emma looked up. Gloria's eyes locked on hers, unblinking, fearless. Every woman who ever made change started where you are. Alone. Scared. Labeled a criminal. A lump rose in Emma's throat. "I tried to tell the truth, and it ruined everything." "No, baby," Gloria said. "It revealed everything. That's different." Emma stared at her, those words echoing through her mind like a heartbeat. It revealed everything. Hours passed, but Emma didn't sleep. She sat on the edge of her cot, replaying every moment. The party, the humiliation, the files, the flash drive still hidden somewhere outside these walls. Gloria snored softly across the room. Even in her sleep, she looked strong. The kind of strength that grows from too many battles to count. When the morning light crept through the bars, Emma stood. Something in her chest had hardened, not cold, but solid, like resolve taking shape. She whispered to herself, "They can call me whatever they want. I know the truth." Gloria stirred, blinking awake. "What's that?" Emma turned to her, voice steady now. "I'm done being quiet. If I have to scream my truth through every wall they build, I will." Gloria smiled, the kind of smile that carried history in it. "That's the spirit, child. That's how revolutions start. One woman, one voice, and no fear left to lose." Emma stepped closer to the bars, gripping them tight as the hallway buzzed with the start of another day. Somewhere beyond those walls, Richard Hayes was still smiling on television, pretending to be a hero. But she would change that. She didn't know how yet, but she knew she would. She looked up at the gray ceiling, whispering like a prayer, "No matter what it costs, I'll make them hear me." The world silenced her once, but this time, she's ready to speak louder than ever. Rain streaked down the motel window like melted glass. Landon hadn't slept in 2 days. His eyes were bloodshot, his fingers raw from typing. On the flickering laptop screen, code scrolled endlessly. One password broken, another firewall bypassed. He sat in a dark corner, the glow of the monitor painting his face in cold blue light. Outside, thunder rolled like a warning. On the bed lay a single photo of Emma, her mugshot, printed from the news. Beneath it, a handwritten note he'd found tucked in her old notebook, "If you stay silent, they win." He whispered it under his breath like a vow. "Then they won't win." Finally, the progress bar hit 100%. He exhaled, trembling. "I'm in." The folders opened one by one. Unity_backup, Project Raven, Community Impact, Black Ledger. Landon clicked through the data, screenshots of forged grant lists, offshore transfers, and falsified donations. It was worse than he'd imagined. Richard Hayes wasn't just stealing from the poor. He was weaponizing charity to wash dirty money and buy political loyalty. Each document was another nail in his father's empire. Landon hesitated only once before uploading everything to a secure public drive. His heart pounded. This is for her. With a final keystroke, he hit send. Across the world, screens blinked alive. Newsrooms, bloggers, activists, everyone got it at once. Subject, the real Hayes Industries, leaked files. Within minutes, hashtags began trending. #Hayes scandal, #justice for Emma, #charity fraud exposed. Morning anchors read headlines in stunned voices. Billionaire Richard Hayes accused of using minority women's identities for fake donations. New evidence suggests massive corporate cover-up. The footage spread like wildfire. Protests erupted outside Hayes Tower. People held up signs reading "Not Your Charity" and listened to her. For the first time, the world was seeing Emma's truth. Landon sat back, exhausted but alive. The rain outside softened, like the storm had done its job. His phone buzzed with unknown numbers, reporters, activists, lawyers, but he ignored them all. Instead, he opened a blank message addressed to her lawyer. Subject, she was right. He hit send. Then he whispered into the empty room, "You did it, Emma." By dawn, the streets were on fire, not with destruction, but with defiance. People marched under umbrellas, shouting her name. Emma Brooks told the truth. Shut down Hayes Industries. From his car, parked at the edge of the protest, Landon watched in awe. He could almost hear her laugh again, the way she used to when she believed something good might happen. He smiled for the first time in days. "You're free now," he whispered. He started the car, ready to drive to the courthouse and turn himself in. Ready to face whatever came next as long as she was safe. But fate, as always, had other plans. The light turned green. Landon's car rolled forward. He never saw the black SUV speeding through the intersection. It slammed into his driver's side with a deafening crunch of metal and glass. The world went white. The airbag exploded. The windshield shattered into 1,000 glittering pieces. Screams echoed from the sidewalk. Tires screeched. Then silence. The SUV didn't stop. It fishtailed, turned down an alley, and vanished. By the time police arrived, Landon's car was mangled beyond recognition. Driver's door caved in, blood on the steering wheel, no sign of movement inside. The news broke an hour later. Anonymous whistleblower behind Hayes' leak found dead in car crash. But when the coroner's report reached the morgue that afternoon, one line stood out: body not recovered from wreckage. He was gone. Vanished. And somewhere, on a private security feed deep within Hayes Industries, Richard Hayes watched the grainy footage of the crash. His face didn't move. "Find him," he said quietly. "Alive or dead." Emma's truth has ignited a revolution, but the man who risked everything for her has disappeared into the fire. When the cell door opened, Emma thought it was another dream. "Brooks," the guard called. "Pack up. You're being released." Her hands trembled as she stood. "Released?" He nodded. The DA dropped the charges. Said new evidence came in overnight. She didn't ask what evidence. She already knew. Somewhere, somehow, Landon had done it. Outside, the sky was overcast, heavy with late afternoon light. Reporters waited near the gate, cameras flashing like hungry lightning. "Emma, do you have any comment? Did you know about the fraud? Is it true Landon Hayes is dead?" The last question sliced through her. She froze, breath caught in her throat. Dead? She pushed past them, clutching the thin plastic bag of her belongings. The world roared, but all she could hear was silence. Her small apartment felt emptier than before, like the air itself remembered him. His jacket still hung over the chair. The mug he used was still on the counter, coffee stains dried in a circle. She turned on the TV, half afraid, half desperate. Every channel carried the same story: Hayes Foundation collapse sparks national investigation. Whistleblower's death linked to charity fraud. They showed his car, twisted metal, broken glass, smoke curling into the gray sky. Her legs gave out. She slid to the floor, covering her face. "No, please." He'd saved her, freed her, and the world had taken him for it. For days, she didn't speak to anyone. Food went untouched. The city moved on without her. But grief can only stay quiet for so long before it starts to turn into something else. Anger. It came slowly, like heat under skin. Every headline calling her lucky to be released. Every commentator saying she must have learned her lesson. Every photo of Richard Hayes walking free, smiling for cameras as if he hadn't built his empire on stolen lives. She turned off the TV, picked up her old laptop. If no one would tell the truth, she would. She opened a blank webpage, hands shaking. At the top, she typed, "From the inside, what they don't want you to know." Her first post wasn't polished. It wasn't perfect. It was raw. She wrote about the way powerful men weaponized image and charity. About how companies used diversity as a brand while silencing the voices they claimed to uplift. About how they'd stolen her name and her dignity and still called her the problem. When she hit publish, she didn't expect anyone to read it. By morning, the post had 50,000 views. By night, 200,000. Women from all over the country commented, sharing their stories of being the only one in the room. Ignored, talked over, fired for speaking up. She called the blog the Unseen Table, a place for those never invited to sit. And for the first time since she walked out of jail, Emma smiled. Her inbox filled with messages, supporters, journalists, even activists asking to collaborate. But one email stopped her cold. It came from an anonymous address. No subject line. No name. Inside was a single sentence: "He's alive." Emma's heart stopped. Her first instinct was denial. A cruel prank. But then she noticed the attachment. A blurry photo taken from a distance. A man in a hoodie, sitting at a bus stop somewhere near the harbor. His head bowed, hands clasped. It wasn't clear. The angle was terrible. But something about the way he sat, the slope of his shoulders, the curve of his jaw, was unmistakable. Landon. She clutched the screen, breath trembling. It can't be. Then, below the image, 3 more words appeared in a follow-up email. He needs you. Emma stared at the screen until tears blurred her vision. He wasn't gone. Not yet. She closed the laptop, grabbed her keys, and whispered to herself, "Hold on, Landon. I'm coming." The world thinks he's dead, but Emma just learned hope still breathes. The rain hadn't stopped since dawn, a cold, endless drizzle that blurred the world into gray. Emma drove with both hands tight on the wheel, her eyes locked on the GPS dot flashing red across a map of forgotten streets. The anonymous email had led her here, a place outside the city limits where the lights of downtown died and only silence remained. An old neon sign flickered ahead through the fog, Harbor View Motel. Only half the letters still worked. She parked, heart pounding. The lot was empty except for a single dented pickup and a broken vending machine humming near the office. Room 6. That's what the message said. Her shoes splashed through puddles as she walked, her reflection trembling in the water like her pulse. When she reached the door, she hesitated, one hand raised, frozen midair. Then she knocked. Nothing. She tried again, louder. "Hello." Still silence. She turned to leave, thinking maybe it had been a mistake, a cruel trick from the same world that had already taken so much from her. But then she heard it. A faint cough from inside. Her breath caught. Landon. The lock clicked once, then again. Slowly, the door cracked open. And there he was. Alive. But barely. He looked thinner, paler, his hair longer, a healing scar running down the side of his face. His arm was in a sling, and there was a tiredness in his eyes she'd never seen before. For a second, neither of them moved. Then she whispered, "You're real." Landon gave a faint, broken smile. "You found me." She stepped forward and hugged him so tight he winced. "I thought you were dead." "Everyone was supposed to think that," he murmured. "That's the only reason I'm still here." She pulled back just enough to look at him. "What happened?" He closed the door and locked it. The room was dim, one flickering lamp, a pile of bandages on the table, and take-out boxes gone cold. "I didn't crash by accident," he said quietly. "It was him." "Your father." He nodded, jaw tight. "He found out I leaked the files. His security team traced my laptop. The SUV that hit me, it wasn't random. They were supposed to finish the job." Emma felt her stomach twist. "But how did you survive?" "Someone pulled me from the car before it exploded. A truck driver, I think. I woke up in a hospital 2 towns over. No ID, no records. I used a fake name and disappeared." He rubbed his face, exhausted. "I've been hiding ever since." Emma's throat tightened. "Landon, you could have reached out. I thought you were gone." "I couldn't," he said, voice trembling. "If they knew I lived, they'd come after you again." She shook her head, tears building. "You still think you can protect me by disappearing?" He looked at her, eyes raw and filled with guilt. "I didn't just disappear, Emma. I ran. I was afraid, not of dying, but of what he'd do to you if he knew I was alive." She reached for his hand. "He already tried to destroy me. You can't hide from that kind of man, Landon. You have to expose him." He laughed softly, bitterly. "You think the system cares about truth? My father owns senators, judges, whole networks. Then we take it outside the system," she said fiercely. "We've already started a fire. Let it burn all the way." For a moment, silence hung between them, heavy, electric, alive. He looked up at her with something like pride. "You've changed." She smiled faintly. "Maybe. Or maybe I just stopped being scared." Landon's eyes softened, but his voice dropped to a whisper. "Emma, there's something else you need to know." She frowned. "What?" He hesitated, then spoke slowly, each word heavy as stone. "The night of the crash, before it happened, I got a call from one of my dad's men. He said there was an order on my name. A cleanup. Her stomach clenched. A cleanup. Landon nodded. My father didn't just want to silence me. He wanted to erase me. Emma took a step back, the truth crashing over her. He tried to kill his own son. Landon's voice broke. He said I wasn't his son anymore. The room fell silent except for the faint buzz of the flickering lamp. Rain tapped against the window, like the world itself was holding its breath. Emma reached out and placed her hand over his heart. Then let's make sure he never gets to say that again. He looked at her, truly looked, and in his eyes, the fear began to turn into something else. Resolve. They've reunited, but now they both know the truth. Richard Hayes didn't just want control. He wanted blood. The chandeliers glimmered like stars above polished marble floors. The Hayes Foundation annual charity gala, once a symbol of glamour, now felt like a stage waiting for a reckoning. Reporters filled the ballroom, their cameras glinting as classical music played softly in the background. Champagne glasses clinked. Laughter echoed. It was a night built on illusion, and Emma was done pretending. She stood just inside the doors, wearing a simple black dress that did nothing to hide her scars. Landon stood beside her in a borrowed tuxedo, the faint line of a healed wound still visible across his cheek. Ready? He whispered. Emma's heart thudded hard enough to hurt. No, she said, but I'm here anyway. At the far end of the room, Richard Hayes stood beneath a banner that read Restoring Hope, a new era of charity. He was shaking hands, smiling, perfect as ever. Cameras followed his every move like he was royalty. Landon's hands clenched at his sides. He doesn't even look human to me anymore. Then let's remind him we are, Emma said. They walked forward, slow, steady, unstoppable. Heads turned. Whispers rippled through the room. Is that her? I thought she was in prison. And him, I thought he was dead. The music faltered. Even the pianist stopped playing. Richard finally noticed them, his expression freezing for a heartbeat before settling into that familiar, practiced calm. Well, he said smoothly, setting down his glass. The dead return. How dramatic. Landon's voice carried across the room. You tried to kill me. A murmur swept through the crowd. Cameras lifted. Reporters pushed closer. Richard chuckled softly. Now, son. Don't call me that, Landon snapped. You tried to erase me. Richard's eyes hardened, but his smile didn't fade. I did what I had to do to protect our name. You chose to destroy it. Emma stepped forward. No, Richard. You destroyed it the moment you stole from the people who trusted you. Cameras flashed. Reporters leaned in. She pulled out a USB drive, holding it high. These are the files you hid. Every fake charity, every forged name, every dollar laundered through lies, exposed. Gasps filled the ballroom. Richard's jaw tightened, though his voice remained smooth. And yet, Miss Brooks, the world already decided you were a liar once. Do you really think they'll believe you now? She met his gaze, her voice steady. They already do. Behind her, a projector screen flickered to life. Landon had cued it earlier. On it, images appeared one by one. Bank transfers, false signatures, even Richard's private messages authorizing charitable reallocation. The room erupted in chaos. Reporters shouted. Flashbulbs exploded. Guests whispered furiously. Richard's mask finally cracked. You have no idea what you've done. Oh, I do, Emma said softly. I gave the truth a microphone. He leaned close enough that only she could hear him. His voice turned venomous. You think the world cares about your truth? It doesn't. It cares about power. And I still have more of it than you can imagine. She didn't flinch. Then let's see how long that lasts. The crowd surged forward, shouting questions, recording every second. Richard raised his hands in mock surrender, turning to the cameras. My son and this woman are confused. They've been manipulated by those who want to see me fall. I have nothing to hide. Bang! The sound sliced through the ballroom, sharp, echoing, final. Screams erupted. Glass shattered. The projector crashed to the floor. Emma ducked, heart hammering, her ears ringing from the shock. Landon grabbed her arm, pulling her behind a table. Stay down. Chaos engulfed the room. People running, shouting, tripping over chairs. Across the floor, Richard Hayes stood frozen, his white tuxedo stained with spreading crimson. His hand pressed against his chest, eyes wide with disbelief. The microphone he'd been holding rolled across the marble, feedback screaming through the speakers. Emma stared, trembling. Oh my God. Landon's breath came in ragged bursts. Who fired? But no one knew. The crowd had erupted into confusion, guests pushing toward exits, guards shouting for order. Somewhere near the balcony, a shadow moved, a figure in black slipping out the side door, unseen by most. Emma clutched Landon's hand as the room descended into chaos. Her voice broke as she whispered, "This isn't over." Landon looked at his father's body, the cameras flashing wildly around it. His face was pale, unreadable. "No," he said softly. "It's just beginning." The truth finally exploded into the open, but one gunshot just changed everything. Flames painted the night sky in shades of orange and fury. The once grand Hayes estate, the symbol of untouchable wealth and power, was now collapsing under its own lies. Sirens wailed from every direction, their red lights cutting through smoke thick enough to taste. Firefighters screamed orders, hoses hissed, glass burst from windows like fireworks. Emma stood at the edge of the chaos, coughing, her face streaked with soot and tears. She could barely process what had happened inside that ballroom. The gunshot, the panic, the stampede. Richard Hayes had been carried out on a stretcher, motionless, his empire bleeding out beside him. Landon had tried to help his father, despite everything. He'd gone back into the burning mansion to drag him out. But the fire had spread too fast. Now she couldn't see him anywhere. "Landon!" she screamed, voice raw. "Landon, please." No answer. Only the crackle of flames devouring history. She tried to run forward, but a firefighter caught her by the arm. It's too dangerous." "He's still in there," she cried, trying to pull free. The man's eyes softened. "We're doing everything we can." She looked back at the house, or what was left of it. The marble pillars had collapsed, the roof gone, the ballroom engulfed. The same ballroom where Richard Hayes had smiled for cameras and sold his false version of equity. And now, the truth was literally burning for the whole world to see. Hours earlier, before the fire broke out, the footage Emma and Landon had exposed had already reached every major news outlet. It showed everything. Offshore accounts tied to racial justice initiatives. Millions funneled into shell charities named after real victims of discrimination. Photos of Richard Hayes shaking hands with politicians who'd helped cover it all up. He'd built his empire not on generosity, but on guilt. And now, it was collapsing in flames. A crash pulled Emma's attention back to the present. A section of the mansion caved in with a thunderous boom. Sparks rained down like judgment. "Landon!" she screamed again, tears streaming down her cheeks. Then, a shadow moved through the smoke. She blinked hard, thinking it was a hallucination. But no, it was him. Landon stumbled through the doorway, coughing violently, half dragging, half carrying another body. One of the guards, unconscious and bleeding. His suit was burned, his arm blooded, his face streaked black with soot. Emma ran to him, catching him just as his knees buckled. "Landon, you're bleeding." He tried to smile, but his voice was hoarse. "He was still breathing when I found him." She glanced down at the guard he'd saved. "What about your father?" Landon's eyes flickered with something between pain and disbelief. "He didn't make it." Before she could respond, another explosion ripped through the front of the house, a gas line igniting in a deafening roar. The blast threw them both backward. Emma hit the ground hard, dust and debris raining down. She scrambled up, disoriented, her ears ringing. "Landon." He lay on his side, motionless. She crawled to him, shaking his shoulders. "No, no, no." His chest rose, faintly. Barely. She pressed her hand against his neck, searching for a pulse. "Stay with me," she pleaded. "You don't get to leave me again." Firefighters rushed in, dragging hoses, shouting over the roar. One of them grabbed her arm again. "We've got him. Step back." They lifted Landon onto a stretcher, his face ghostly pale under the flashing lights. Emma ran beside them as they pushed through the chaos toward the ambulance. Her heart raced faster than the sirens. "Please," she begged the medic. "He saved someone. Don't let him die for it." The medic didn't look up. "We'll do everything we can." They slammed the ambulance doors, and the vehicle sped off into the night. Emma stood frozen, staring after it as the last of the mansion crumbled behind her. Ash floated through the air like falling snow, the end of an empire. Reporters surrounded her, cameras flashing. "Emma, did you know about the explosion? Was this revenge? Did Landon survive?" She didn't answer. Her voice was gone, lost somewhere between the smoke and the sirens. Behind her, the Hayes family crest melted off the iron gate, gold letters dripping into blackened ruin. For the first time, the world saw Richard Hayes for what he truly was. A thief of hope. A man who used compassion as camouflage. And as the flames consumed the last of his legacy, Emma whispered to the night, "Justice burns brighter than any lie." But her eyes stayed fixed on the road, on the red and blue lights fading into the distance, carrying the only person who'd ever believed her. Landon Hayes, fighting for his life. The empire has fallen, but so has the man who helped destroy it. A year can change everything. The old Hayes mansion stood once again, not in marble glory, but in grace. The fire had taken the lies, but Emma rebuilt it with truth. Where chandeliers once hung, there were now warm lights strung from wooden beams. Where portraits of billionaires once loomed, there were framed photographs of women, mothers, workers, dreamers, who had once been forgotten. A new sign hung above the iron gate, Grace Table Foundation. It wasn't just a name. It was a promise. Inside, the ballroom that once echoed with greed now hummed with laughter and music. The long tables were covered in handmade linens, the air rich with the smell of freshly baked bread. Women in aprons, single mothers, immigrants, survivors, moved gracefully, serving meals to families who could not afford them elsewhere. Emma stood at the front, dressed in white. A color of peace. A color she once thought she'd never wear again. "Grace Table," she said into the microphone, her voice trembling slightly, "was built for every woman who was told she didn't belong. For every hand that worked twice as hard and still went unseen. Tonight, we take back what was stolen. Our dignity, our place, our voice." Applause filled the room, rising like a tide. In the front row, Landon watched her with quiet awe. The scars on his face had faded, but not the lessons they carried. He had been through surgery, therapy, and the long silence of recovery. The doctors had called it a miracle that he'd survived at all. To him, the true miracle stood right in front of him. The woman who had turned pain into power. When the applause finally quieted, he rose from his chair and walked onto the stage. Emma blinked in surprise as he reached for her hand. "Emma Brooks," he said, his voice shaking just enough to make it real. "I once thought my name, my world, my privilege, meant something. But the truth is, I learned everything from you. You taught me that love isn't found in power. It's found in purpose." He dropped to one knee. Gasps filled the room. Emma covered her mouth, tears already falling. Landon held out a small velvet box. Inside was a ring, simple, elegant, not expensive, but engraved with one word, Grace. He looked up at her, his eyes steady. "Will you let me spend the rest of my life serving this purpose with you?" Emma couldn't speak for a moment. Then she laughed through her tears, nodding. "Yes. 1,000 times yes." The room erupted in applause. Laughter. Hope. For once, everything felt right. As the band began to play, guests stood, dancing between the tables. Children ran barefoot through the courtyard where roses now grew from the ashes of what had burned. Emma stepped outside for a moment, breathing in the night air. The sky above the mansion was clear, calm. A year ago it had been full of smoke. Now it was full of stars. She closed her eyes, whispering, "We made it." A soft voice from behind said, "Not everyone did." Emma turned. A woman stood at the edge of the courtyard, tall, elegant, wrapped in a deep red dress that shimmered beneath the lights. She was older now, but Emma recognized her instantly. Marianne Holt, Richard Hayes's former lawyer. The same woman who once smiled on news cameras defending him, calling Emma a liar. "Ms. Holt," Emma said carefully, "you shouldn't be here." Marianne's red lips curved faintly. "Oh, I'm not here to stay. I just came to drop something off." She reached into her clutch and pulled out a sealed white envelope, its corner stamped with an embossed logo, a phoenix rising from flames. Across the front, written in clean black ink, were 3 words that made Emma's blood run cold. Project Unity 2.0. Emma's voice trembled. "What is this?" Marianne smiled, not kindly, but knowingly. "Just proof that fire doesn't kill everything, dear. Some things rise again." Before Emma could speak, Marianne slipped the envelope into her hand, turned, and disappeared into the night crowd, her red dress vanishing like smoke in the breeze. Emma stood frozen under the string lights, staring at the envelope. The music from inside floated through the open doors, laughter mixing with the hum of a brighter future. She could almost hear the fire crackling again, not burning, but whispering. She looked down at the envelope one last time. Even when the fire ends, the ashes still whisper. If this story moved you, comment grace below, and share it with someone who believes love can rewrite history.